All right, folks. So it's working now. I had to fix my server. So let me get oriented again. You start at samsclass.info. You go to 129S and then projects, and then this one, command injection, the second project. So like I say, if you have a router, it will have a page that lets you test your internet connection. So if you put in an IP address like this, and then send pings, it will test it by pinging it. And what this did was it executed a command ping -C2 and then the IP address. And what's happened here is the programmer, which was me that wrote this page, was sloppy enough to use one language to create a line of code in another language. This is what leads to command injection vulnerabilities. This is a PHP page, and the PHP code just uses the OS command to create a line of bash command line. And so it executes the ping command on this address. And you can tell that because this is just the output of the command line ping command. So what that means is you can add more commands here. So if I take this IP address and I put a semicolon ls, it will send the pings and then execute the ls, and you see some files here. So you can now execute command on the server. Now you might wonder whether you have root privileges on the server. So to find that out, you could do an ID to find out who you are. And the ID will tell you that you are www.data, which is the user account for the Apache web server. So you're not root. You have only certain limited privileges on the server, but you do have the ability to execute some commands by just putting them here. And you can string them together. So I could do that, ID, and then a date, and then ls. And it'll just execute all those commands. First, it does ID, which tells me this information about who I am. Then it does the date. Then it does ls. So now I can execute commands on the server, which is, of course, why my server keeps getting hacked all the time. And so there are some challenges here. Find some flags. There's 4 flags you can find on the server. And here's some hints for commands to try. If you didn't learn the commands in that Linux journey thing, here's some common commands that will let you search through the file system and find some flags on the server. And when you find them, you should turn them in your Canvas server. So I will add, yeah, here you are. Here's what you have to do. You'll find a flag, catch an image, and you'll highlight it in the image. I'll add that step here, and then submit it in your Canvas. So this one here has its own little scoring engine, like it captured a flag, because there's so many, there's like 83 answers. The rest of them, you're going to submit them in Canvas, because there's only like a small number of flags to find. So that's the first thing. This is the simplest kind of command injection, where you just put the command right there. Now, the next one is another big one that affected the entire web. This was actually huge news when it happened. This was, let me just see if it's going to work, because now I'm feeling a little insecure. Let me find an image someplace. I'll just go here. And there's an image. Okay, right click, open image in new tab. Okay, so I'm going to save that image on my desktop. It's called dh something.jpg. Okay, there it is. Good. So I've saved that image where I can find it. Now I'm going to try and use this image magic program to put that on my website. So I choose a file. There it is. Then I upload it. And all right, that's what I thought. I have to put this on my server too. Both of these were off, but now I know how to fix it. All right. There. Should be fixed now. So upload. There we go. So this image magic library was the standard library to manipulate images on Linux servers. Everybody was using it everywhere, chat rooms and social networks and everything. And so it does things like convert images. So this converts the thumbnail to a 300 by 300 image. So it makes this image, and when you click it, you see the original image, which in this case is smaller, but it could have been bigger. But none of that matters to us really. But I just copied some normal code from somebody's PHP website where they said, here's some standard code to process images. And the point is, it does it with a command line, and it creates that command line and uses this image magic library. And the image magic library had a famous vulnerability. And here's the vulnerability. You make a text file with this data. and save it and make it look like an image. So I go into a text editor here, and I create a file that just contains that stuff in it, and I save it, file, save as. Okay, and I put it here on my desktop, and I call it exploit.jpg. It's not a JPEG, but I give it a JPG extension to fool ImageMagick into thinking it's an image. And now I send up that one. Choose file, exploit, upload. And now notice what happens. It prints hello, and it prints the date. So let's take a look at that code that I pasted into there. And so what's going on here is the people that designed ImageMagick decided not only should it be able to process images and resize them and such, you should be able to add blocks of color to the background of your image or something. So now I can make a block of color with these coordinates, and I can fill it with a solid color. So that's fine. But then they said, maybe you should be able to fill it with a color that you fetch from a website so you can make a dynamically changing color on the image. So they added this URL feature where you can refer to a website. And when they implemented that, they just did the same thing I did with ping. They just made a command line that uses curl and says curl, and then feeds in this data that came from the user. So if you use the right punctuation marks, which in this case are quotes and a pipe, then you can get to a point where you can add commands here. So here's the command that echoes hello, echo quote hello, and then semicolon date. So these are just command line commands. You don't get to put them right in a form with an IP address like before. You have to put them in a file that looks like an image, but you again have a place where you can add commands. So again, I could find out who I am on the server with ID here. So if I save that, I'll just save it on the same name, and then I upload it again. So I go back and then choose file, exploit, upload again, and now I got the ID. So once again, I can see that I am www.data again. I'm just the Apache web server user. I'm not root, but again, I can execute commands on the server. So this is, again, now you can execute commands in that fashion, and there are some flags defined. A couple more flags, one inside a file, one where you have to execute a program. And then there's a Drupal command injection. This is another one from 2018. Drupal is a open source web design platform that you can use to put up web pages, a competitor to WordPress, and it had a whole series of enormous security flaws. They called them Drupalgeddon, and then Drupalgeddon 2 and Drupalgeddon 3. And this is one of them. I think this one is Drupalgeddon 2, but I forget the name. But the point is, I made a Drupal website running an old vulnerable version sitting here. And it's got a login of student one and student one you have to put in to get there just to stop, because otherwise it gets hacked so fast that it's always down. And now Drupal has this vulnerability, and the vulnerability, you have to have Python. So some machine with Python, here's how you can put Python on a Debian-based system like Kali or Ubuntu. And once you got Python, here's the code that someone wrote to demonstrate it. So let me shrink this down so it's there. Again, there's a page on the Drupal website that again made the same kind of mistake. Somewhere on this mail sign-up part of the page, there's this form where you're filling up mail data. And as you can see down here, you can execute a command. And this one executes echoes a smiley face and puts it in a file called yourname.txt. So now this one, you cannot put out a greater than sign to redirect output. You have to use pipe T because it filters certain characters, which is very common. But the point is, again, here's a place where you can put bash code, and that bash code will execute on the server. So again, you have command injection. It's just that you have to go through a little more work to get to the point that has command injection. So you can run this, that'll create a file with a smiley face in it. And now by modifying this, you can run more commands, and there's again a couple of flags to put on your server. So try those. Gives you a little practice with command injection vulnerabilities, and that'll get you started on the projects. Then just keep going. Work ahead for the more advanced students. You can do these SQL injection I'll talk about next time, and then go into the Burp and Web Security Academy. It's just a free sign up here. at Portswigger. And now you get in this free online class, which is fantastic. As you can see, I've done about half or a third of it, and it's wonderful. And if you just click view all, you'll see the learning materials. The only thing annoying about this is they are not in any logical order. So if you start with OAuth, you'll probably get frustrated. OAuth is not easy. I would start with command injection like we just did. They've got command injection down here someplace. There, OS command injection, that'll be pretty easy. Directory traversal is pretty easy. Start with them. Unless you're a more advanced student, the others will probably be too confusing at first, and you'll find a bunch of projects like this to do. They're all very good, and it will keep track of your projects. So you'll have a, like I have, you have a score someplace, my account, right here. It was right there. Let me go back. Right there, it tells you how far you've gone. So this is where the meat of this homework is going to be. Just solve these. They're wonderful. You're learning stuff right up to date, and they're adding more all the time. And these little numbers here are enough to determine your score. So that should get you started. You should start doing some of the hands-on projects. And there's also textbook chapters to read and quizzes to take and stuff too, which you'll find up here. So we just did chapter 1. And so you should read chapter 2 and 3 for next week and take the quiz on chapter 1 and 2 and start doing projects. So that should get you started. I'm going to stop this video.